Hello, welcome to the Legacy Stories with Marija and Coua live.
I cannot wait to share my stories with you.
My name is Marija.
This is Coua.
I was born and raised in Bosnia until age of 19.
I am the firstborn of a refugee family that came to the United States in 1986.
I currently still live in US with my family.
I am so excited.
Welcome and enjoy.
Hello. Welcome to Legacy Stories with Marija and Coua. This is Coua here, and Maria's here with us as well.
Hey, everybody.
I hope
So
everyone
nice to
is
be
doing
here.
well today. Yeah, I'm super happy to be here too. And today we are talking about belonging.
Yay. I did not prepare, I did not even think about this episode. I'm just gonna show up. And it's almost like when you're showing up for coaching with a coach and you're like, I'm just going to show up and just let it all out. Not like, okay, this is not a coaching call. Do not let it all out. But we're going to be like open here.
Yes, this is a totally candid conversation, but I really feel like all of our conversations are candid, and that's why Legacy Stories is so fun and so personable because we just speak from our heart, and what comes up, we let it out. So where do you want to start with belonging?
You know, what do you think belonging is?
That's so funny because I was literally thinking that same thing. Like, what does belonging mean? So I love that we're already on the same page here.
Oh, I heard
Um,
this quote. I'm going to start you off with something. I heard it now. I swear to God, I don't know who said this. There was a story about a story about a story, but I think it was originally, they were talking about a quote by Maya Angelou about belonging. And I will say Brene Brown was quoting Maya Angelou and somebody else was quoting Brene Brown, but I remember the quote, and of course I cannot cite it now because I did not have it. But it was about belonging. You belong everywhere, but you belong nowhere. And weirdly enough, like I was sitting there and I was like, I get it, right? Does that resonate with you? There's literally like a bee in my car right now.
I'm just like, now I want to go find that quote.
Yeah, do try and find it while I
Okay.
try and murder a bee here.
Okay.
I mean, let the bee out.
You never know what's going to happen on the podcast. So, okay, this is the quote that I found.
Okay.
You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great. Is that the one?
Yes. Yes, that's it. How does that sit with you?
Let me internalize this for a moment.
And to expand the question for both of us, I guess, is like, how do you as an immigrant, as a child born in this country to immigrants, feels about belonging in this country or in your community at least, or
like that first. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the quote first. So you only are free when you realize you belong no place. And then it really saying again, you are only free when you realize you belong every place. You are only free when you realize you belong no place at all. I feel like that, yeah, now that I'm reading that and really internalizing that, like, wow, I think that's true. Because like for myself as a person, like freedom, that's one of my personal values. Like I thrive when I feel freedom. And I was actually just thinking about this, how like I don't want to be like fit into a box. And I feel like this is kind of that same thing here when I'm saying that, oh, I belong here, or I belong there, or I don't belong here, or I don't belong there. That's literally me trying to fit into a box or not fit into a box. And then that is not freedom at all. So yeah, the quote is really resonating with me when I'm thinking about it at this like deeper level, especially with like the feeling of the emotion of freedom, because that emotion, it's really helpful to me. It actually helps me take actions that are more aligned with who I am and what I desire. What
That
about
is
for you?
so how it hit me at that moment was like immigrants know this at the best and at the worst, right? Because in a way, not all of us. Some of us move because we don't belong where we were born. But then we move to this other place that we don't belong because we were not raised there, right?
Yeah.
But then eventually you realize that, you know, you belong everywhere, but you don't belong anywhere. Because I have a home, I'll say, oh, back home, right? I have a home there, but then I'm living here. So if I was to go there, I'd be like, I gotta go home, right? So
Yeah.
it's like your home is kind of where you are, and you have people here and you have people there. You can belong there and you can belong here. But basically you don't belong anywhere because you don't have that one spot. As you said, like you're not in that one like box in that one spot, and you belong like you have values here, you have value like you're kind of stretched out because you have all this knowledge from everywhere. You have internalized all these beliefs that
Mhm.
you would not internalize if you stayed in one place. And that can be amazing. It can be also, as I said, I'm going to try not to cuss. So it can be also hard because it can
Yeah.
create this confusion in your brain because you're brought up with one set of values and how you think you should do things, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to learn all this new set of values in a different place. And also because you are a different generation, right? And then it's
Right.
like kind of, they're almost like conflicting, and you have to be conscious enough to choose what works for you.
Yeah. That is like so high level there, what you said at the end, like you have to be conscious of what you choose for you, and that just is like you actually have to be intentional. And I think that that is the part that um growing up I missed, because obviously I didn't know what I don't know. And I think it's, I'm just gonna kind of extend this towards like all immigrants too, like we forget that intentional part, because like you just, the thing about growing up in, I mean, I was born here. So it's like, shouldn't I just belong here then, right? Like you were born here, you're just American, you should just belong here. And that's really kind of a mindset that I did have a little bit growing up. Yet at the same time, I never really felt like I belonged here. And I even remember saying to like a mentor, I don't remember if it was like a college professor or a teacher at this point, but I remember telling them like, I don't feel American. And it was so funny because they just brushed it off like, well, you are American. But I didn't feel it. And even now as an adult, i'm really I'm kind of unsure. Yeah, I am an American citizen, but I'm not really sure like what being an American is. And especially with what's going on in our nation today, it's like very confusing. And then I don't remember where the heck I was going with this and how it all connects back to belonging. But yeah, you were talking about the piece about being conscious. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is some deep stuff. Because when we get to the actual intentionality part, I think it goes back to like, we all want to belong somewhere, I think. And then when going back to that first question of like, what is belonging? The word that popped into my head was acceptance. Belonging is acceptance. Like, oh yeah, you're accepted here. What do you think
Yes.
about that?
I like your definition. I think when I was younger, my definition was that you felt that you fit in. Now it doesn't matter if you actually did fit in or did not,
Yeah.
but did you feel that you fit in? Did you think that you fit in? Like that's like the part that's important because
Mhm.
I did not. I did not fit in. It was like, wait, my idea is a little bit different. This is like how I'm doing like it's a little bit different. Like, you know, you had that little rebel streak where things were not like I did not feel right. But that's also like a child who's growing up and who's developing their ideas and everything. So that belonging was me wanting to fit in, me wanting to have my people. And it took moving away and meeting people and be like, oh, these are my people. Then to realize, like, wait, those are my people. Those are like my original people, right? Because
Yeah.
you forget the most important part that you, when you're growing up, you always belong
Yeah.
to that family unit, right? That's your people, number one. Because when you're growing up, you're
Yeah.
thinking your peers, you're thinking like your ideas, you're thinking this and that, like, do you belong in like a society or in a blah, blah, blah. And then like you grow up like, I'm like, well, number one, I belong in my family unit.
Mhm.
And then number two, of course you belong because you were raised there. It's so funny right now when I look at people and I'm like, I have not seen them for like maybe 15 years and you'll chat with them on Facebook or something. It's like we've never separated because we literally grew up in the same environment and we like, you know, have some connections and it's like you still connect to that level where you just, you know, right? And it's interesting.
So that's like part of belonging too, then, like commonality, acceptance, commonality. All of these things help us achieve belonging. And then I just want to go back to like you were talking about home before, and you know, home is here, home is there. And I have explored this concept of home since I built this current house that I'm living in with my husband. And I've just really found that like home is like wherever you make it, right? Like it's not a certain building, structure, place necessarily. It's just, for me, it's like, okay, who am I with? Like, do I feel at home with them? It's almost more like a feeling than anything else. And I think it's the same thing with belonging. It's more so the sense, an emotion that comes up that helps me actually believe that I belong versus just like think like, oh yeah, I belong here. Like I need to feel what we're just talking, that commonality. I need to feel that acceptance to feel like, oh yes, I belong here. And then of course that freedom too of what that quote was saying.
That connection, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Like, so going back evolutionarily, I'm jumping over now. Like we all wanted to belong
Yeah.
because if not, we die, right? If you do not belong to a group of
Yeah.
people, like a society, a group, a village, or whatever, if you were excluded, you were gonna die. And that was like a trend, and still partially is trend. If you're still excluded, you're still like, not right now in the current society. No, we're not gonna die, but like you're emotionally alone, like you're communicated out of right in out of certain group that you were brought up and that you think like, you know, is your people. So it's kind of like it. I think belonging is this thing that we comes off as fluffy. Oh, you want to belong, right? But it's actually like very primal because it's our
So
survival.
good.
Yeah, right? If we don't
Yeah.
belong, it's dangerous.
Yes. 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 It's like almost a protective mechanism or safety mechanism. But I love what you said, that it is primal. It is, yeah, it is in our nature, our human nature, to want to belong, to desire to belong. And I love what you said about if you didn't belong, that would mean death, because that just made me think of so many like periods in our in world history where if you belonged to this one group, you were executed, like literally, or if you didn't belong, you were executed too. And that is scary. And it's like also like no wonder why people wanted to belong, right? Because we have a history of needing to belong so that you could just live, like what you said.
Right? Yeah, I mean, it's caveman to, world wars and whatnot. And it's just, it keeps repeating and it's important and it's vital. But the part that we all forget that I think it comes down to when she talks about that freedom, like you said, not putting yourself in that box. And I think immigrants who might be like me, we don't move because,
Mhm.
we did not move because there was a war. I did not move because there was a war. There's a lot of people that did. But immigrants who came chasing their dreams like I did, we came chasing that belonging, right? We basically
Mm.
came because we thought that those dreams were basically where we thought we belong. And it makes sense because you gave up everything that you have. How many people would you say, hey, go move across the country? That would just be like, okay, cool. Not a lot of people like would move a continent for that. And there's people who do, people who are like, moving all over the place because they think that that's where they belong. And they just, that's because it's so primal. It's so like survival mechanism. We do it, even if it's scary.
That's so good. And that just made me think about like, well, then that just means like our dreams, right? Like our goals. That's also like another place of belonging then. Like as if we're doing that, then we belong.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. I'm like, because guess where we need to belong? We first need to belong to ourselves, right? Like
Yeah.
we need to feel that belonging inside us because it's never
Mhm.
the circumstance. You know
Mhm.
this. I know this. It's like, we can change that, see? But if we don't
Yeah.
believe and don't think and don't feel that we
Yeah.
belong, we can move across the whole world chasing stuff, but we
Yeah.
never will. If we don't have that thought,
Yeah.
oh, I belong here. Oh, these are my people. Then you're just going to be running around the whole world trying to like catch dreams, chasing belonging.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's like the whole time you could have belonged
I mean, there's
anywhere.
certainly
You
people who
just,
chase other things, right? But for me, it's like that's how it was. And I know that in human existence, you're never ever alone. I know there's other people
yeah.
outside in the world who were like, I'm going to try this somewhere else. In a sense that
Yeah.
I knew if I wanted to be like, for example, scientists, you could not be a scientist back home on the level that I wanted to be. Let's put it that way, right? Or like certain things you could not accomplish there. So that's why, like, you have this dream and your dream doesn't belong there. So you don't belong there. So you gotta go. If you want to chase the dream, but basically you are chasing that belonging.
Wow. I feel like we can even extend that to like our partners or spouses, right? Like, oh, you found this person. Oh, yeah, I belong with you. And it's again, it's just that feeling. And I think in that aspect, belonging is like comforting and love. There's just so many like, feelings I think of when I think of my partner. Like, yeah, I totally belong to them. It's like, it's, yeah, I know, but at the same time, I don't know how I know that I belong with him, but I just do. And that's why I think like belonging is more an emotion than anything else. Because then I even extended that, you're talking about being a scientist. Like, okay, it really extends into our careers too, like having that sense of belonging that, oh yeah, I'm doing the thing that I was put here on earth to do. Yeah, I belong here. I'm supposed to be doing this.
But partners, don't you? I find this because I do live in a community where there's a lot of like people of different, nationalities, and I can see this. The best
Yeah.
marriages I find are between people who have the same upbringing. They don't have to be from the like necessarily the same culture, but in a way, if you're born here but you were raised with immigrant parents, you're more likely to mesh with
Yeah.
people who were born here, raised immigrant parents. If you were come from somewhere else, you're more likely. It's like it's kind of like I see a lot of people pairing that way. Of course, it's not everybody. Different people have different commonalities,
Yeah.
right? It could be something else. But many times I've seen that the way, like kind of people's life path, kind of their trajectories, like kind of are the same. And I always find
Mhm.
it interesting. And it's like, oh yeah, because even me and my husband, we were not raised exactly the same time. And then we were not raised in exactly the same place or even close to each other. But the fact is, it was that same kind of like the trajectory. And so you have these commonalities where we know the music when we were growing up, and we know the TV show, like, right? Like you have those things in common, even like the belief systems are common.
Yeah. But what you were saying before about connection, it's that those commonalities connected you. So then it made it like almost like, I don't know if this is the right word, but like easier to just belong with that person. We're already connected in those like specific little ways.
Yeah, because you build the connection on top of that. You have a base and you're just building on top of it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you don't have any of these.
And I think,
Now, this could be very fun to be a couple with like totally different traditional things, or totally like be like totally different cultural things where you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Right? Like that could be totally fun, but sometimes it can make things a little more complicated, right? Because you're like, these habits, I don't know where they come from. And I'm like, I know exactly where these habits come from. My mother treats my brother this, right? Like, it's like you have like the substance. You understand things because of those commonalities.
I'm so glad you brought up the word understand because that's where I want to go to next. As you were speaking about the spouse and like commonalities, I was thinking about like, well, the belonging comes in because the two people, right? They have this willingness to try and understand each other. And I think with belonging, there has to be a willingness to understand. And it's not just understand like the similarities, but especially to be able to look at the differences and just be willing to be like, I'm going to try to understand this person. And I understand that I'm different, but that it could almost like it could still work. And now that I'm thinking belonging, like it works. It's like, oh yeah, I belong here. Yeah, of course it works. Like it's like almost interchangeable in a sense.
It's what new word did I want to use? Um, wait. It's escaping me now. Yeah, I lost the word. Keep going. I give up on the word. I'm like, darn it. Like I had it, and then I was about to say it, and it's gone.
Don't you hate that? Oh, that's so funny.
Let me ask you a question that
Um,
just popped into.
yeah,
How
yeah.
do you think your parents feel about belonging right now? Like they've been here for a while. How do you think they feel? I'm just trying to predict my future. I mean, it's not gonna be exactly like that. I did not come the same way, right? But I'm like, how am I gonna feel in 50 years?
I think that my dad still, and just talking about my dad, like I still think that he doesn't feel like he belongs here. He absolutely still talks about the old country a lot. And I find that as he's getting older, he talks even more about it. I think if like the old country could go back to how it was, he would 100% go back. And I understand that, right? Because this is a topic of belonging and home, right? Like you belong at home. And that the old country, that's his home. That's where he that emotion belonging. And I
It's,
feel, and again, it's like as he gets older, it's just so much more apparent that he knows where he belongs. And I think that's really powerful too, because you see it's almost like his growth, right, through the years, like as a child. And he did, obviously he tried to like make this his home, but then now it's like allowing himself to like go back to his roots and sharing all the stories with us finally now that I'm an adult. Like I'm really seeing that back there, that is his home, and I just honor that and I respect that. And I do feel sad because it's like, gosh, that is where he belongs, but then he's just trying his best to make do here.
but that's the part that sucks, because people who had to
Yeah.
leave because of stuff like that, and
Yeah.
I know plenty of my people had to leave. And when I say my people, it's like everybody in the region, because of the war, they had to leave too. And it's like, they did not come here because they wanted to build a new home. Their home was what they want, and it does not exist. And it breaks your heart,
Yeah.
because it's like
Yes.
there's
Yes.
nothing they can do. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's really
I
hard, I
feel like
think, to
that,
live that
like
kind of a life.
I think like because we're coaches, like we can really receive that from them, right? And learn from them and like cherish that. And it's like appreciate that we have found a belonging and that we get to live it every single day. And then like that's truly a gift then.
Yeah, because not everybody can have that belonging, right?
Mhm.
Because that
Mhm.
was in their minds, that was taken away from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's,
Yes.
at this point, it's not just like, I think, mindset work. There's actual trauma there. Like there's actual trauma there, that like
Mhm.
that's not, I don't think that amount of mindset coaching without actual like body work, without actual, you know,
Mhm.
because that work
Yeah.
is just like your body remembers what it felt, the good stuff, and then what it felt when it lost it. And what your dad is allowing now is all the emotions to come up, like the good emotions, because he buried them because he was trying to belong here. He was trying to bury all that good stuff and to like be okay in order to survive here. But now that he's older,
Yeah.
he's no longer fighting them. He's allowing the good memories to come up.
Yeah. And in a sense, it's like he's healing, right? And I feel like that also belongs that word. It's coming up. Healing and belonging like go hand in hand too. Because when you start to heal, then you can start to feel that belonging.
I mean, for example, there's people in the world who don't feel like they belong in their own families, right?
Yeah.
And when they find what the other people that they believe that they belong with, that could be healing in a way, right? Like that could be a beginning of a healing,
Absolutely.
right? So,
Yes.
but I think for immigrants, going back to this, when it wasn't you that's like, oh, I don't belong here, but you had to leave, even if you did, that's a different kind of a healing journey, where it's almost grieving. I want to say, like, you have to grieve your home. You have
Yes.
to grieve that. You have to remember the good one. And it's like as if you're, you know, grieving
Yeah.
the loss of it. And many times we don't let ourselves do that because your dad could
Yeah.
not let himself be emotional about the loss. He had a family to feed
Yeah.
and he was
100%.
trying to rebuild.
Yeah. Just like I can't even comprehend, like all that he had to go through, right? Like all the responsibility and then dealing with whatever the emotions that's coming up for you yourself and the thoughts too. It's like so much like being thrown at him. So I can't even imagine like what he went through to
Well,
find that belonging, to try and have that belonging once again.
but isn't it crazy but old
But isn't
human
it crazy
say
but old human?
something like that?
Say that again.
I'm echoing to myself. If something happened?
I just didn't hear what you said before. Like
Oh, okay.
it was a little
Uh, I'm like, isn't it crazy how what people can go through and how strong we can be?
yes, it is. It's like it really shows the human capabilities and our capacity and our potential to almost like feel anything, right? And still come out alive. I
Or
think
is
that's
it
like,
because we
or
bury
is
it?
it because we're very,
I'm echoing on your computer. Oh goodness. This is an awesome episode. This is so much fun. Is it
this
because
is a
maybe
really
we
good
see the pain and we keep going, right? We bury all that deep inside and we do whatever needs to be done to get through it. Like we kind of almost like numb out a little bit.
right. And that goes back to the survival mechanism. We just want to survive. So that just if that means like ignoring all the feelings, avoiding them, sweeping them under the rug, we'll do it because we just it's like the only objective is to live another day
Yeah.
and you just do what it takes. Think like for like our generation now, right? Like we're not fighting a war, we're not escaping a country, but we still also carry that part of the trauma that happened to our parents with us. And it's I think it's crazy now that I have this awareness, like how it shows up in my life. Even now, it's like, oh man, like why? And for me, it's like, why do I have to work through this? Like, this is not fair. Shouldn't it just be like over? I mean, I totally live a different life, but it is crazy how it is carried from generation to generation. And if it isn't that it what?
So good. I'm like, you have to. You have to carry it because he had to survive. So now you have to heal it. Because he did everything to survive, losing his home and establishing home
Yeah,
here, right? So now you do the healing part. It's almost like what's happening in the world, right? The generations before us
so good.
did everything in order to get us here. They did whatever they needed to go through. They went through the systems, they went through all these steps. And now we're here. And we're trying, like, we have the technology, we have like medicine is much better than it was. Like, right, we're not dying early. We're just like a different place.
Yeah,
People have human rights, most countries, right? Like we're making it better at this point. Like we cannot, it's almost like I'm not saying let's not blame people for what they did, but they did what they did. And we got here now. And now let's make this better.
like yeah, it's like now this is the part that I play in this story. And for me, like what's been coming up is like, here's my chance to rewrite our family story. Here's my chance to really almost like heal this trauma so that it doesn't continue on the next generations. Like if I did that, imagine the impact it would have on the future generations. Like
Yes,
the impact of
it's
that
gonna
is
be
so great.
it's gonna be much less impact for your children, right?
Right. Yeah, they're true. Yeah.
Ooh, we're getting funky sounds now.
Is that a cue? Is that a clue that we should wrap it up?
It's like the universe is being like, okay, you two, cut it out. Enough of this belonging stalking. No, but this is
Like
such a
such,
good topic. I'm glad we went these places, and I think we can go deeper.
yeah, 100%. Like this was so fun to talk about, and I love like digging deep into these topics and talking about things that we don't really talk about and getting vulnerable and just sharing our true thoughts, just being really genuine with our listeners about these topics. I love that about this.
Yeah, I do too. I love the. I mean, how far we've gone. It's amazing. What we've all
Hmm.
accomplished is amazing, and I think like it's still a very important part of human life. The belonging is, but
Yeah.
also it's like something that I'm noticing now that's coming up is like, um, you don't need a. It's almost that right now in this current society, there's this fake belonging, right? Like we're kind of trying to almost force it, right, to an extent. And I lost where it was. I had. It is time for us to end today's podcast. Um, what was my example? Shoot, this is when you don't prepare for a
Where do you
podcast
see
ahead of
that?
time.
Tell me where you're seeing where like people or maybe things or societies trying to force belonging.
Okay, so I think there's these Hallmark holidays, right? That I think are trying to like almost like, for example, Halloween. It's not one culture's thing in US, right? It's like just like no, it's not like a culture thing, right? But it's like a Halloween holiday almost, Hallmark holiday. Christmas, which
Yeah.
is a religious holiday, has become almost a Hallmark holiday. Then there's a whole Valentine's Day that like a whole holiday has been created, and people kind of, you know, you're almost feeling pressure around you because wherever you move, whatever you watch, it's there. So you're almost feeling pressure to celebrate these holidays, which have like kind of like feel like they're everywhere and everybody should celebrate them, but they're not real holidays. Like there's no like many times there's no cultural meaning behind them except like some story. It's like we're coming up with our own like, and I'm okay. I enjoy all the holidays. I believe I will drink, but the thing is, it's like, are we actually losing that original belonging that we had in groups, right? That's like if you belong to this culture, these are your tradition. If you belong to, because I kind of don't want to lose that. I love all traditions and I love being a guest and observing traditions, right? But it doesn't mean I take it on for me.
Yeah. But I
And
think
I
that goes
do that.
back to then like what you were talking about before about like being conscious and being intentional.
But
Like,
isn't that the
yeah,
word?
celebrate these big holidays, but just don't forget like what's important to you, what helps you feel like you belong. It's like don't lose yourself in all of the madness.
Yes. Well, listen, we have our Christmas. Orthodox Christmas is January 7th. But Santa comes in back home even now. When I was a kid, Santa came on New Year's, right? Because that was introduced then as a social concept everywhere. Everybody celebrated New Year's. I don't remember from whatever year,
Okay.
but right, it was like a social concept everywhere. It was kind of mostly celebrated. Our New Year's in January 14th, but we celebrated. Big deal was the International New Year's, and Santa came when I was a kid at International New Year's. We did not have Santa for our Christmas. So when I moved here, I'm like, what? Santa comes for Christmas? What is going on? Like he's like right. But now my kids, because they go to school and everywhere, I was like, okay, well, we have two options. We
Yeah.
can be like, this is not happening. We don't do Santa at all. But I'm like, I kind of like Santa, but I'm like, you know what? Santa comes for Christmas. For our Christmas, which has a different name, we do religious stuff, right? So it's like, for me, it was like more logical to make Santa come then and they can get some presents and they can be happy and they can talk to their friends. But they understand that that is not their religious holiday. It's just the day that the Santa comes, right? That's all it is. And then we do our
Yeah.
holiday. And that's kind of like, it's like, I'm like, the more I think about it, it's like, but technically, if like you're really strict, you would be like, no, this is our religion and there's no Santa. But it's like, let's be honest, Santa's not really religious for the other kids either. It's just, a thing that was created around Christmas to sell more presents. Because of course there was Hanukkah before Christmas and they were giving gifts for Hanukkah for 7 nights, like, and then of course Christmas came up with this. So
Yeah. You get to just pick and choose
I'm like, be
what's
conscious,
important to
decide
you.
for your own family.
Yes. Choose what's right for you.
But that's the fun and joy of being alive, right?
It is.
Well,
It is. But it's also fun and joy of being a human is like being able to have these choices of like, yeah, this is good. This is not what I want. Or, whatnot.
exactly. It's good. It's good. Well, I think we should wrap it up before we have any more bees or interruptions or before anything else happens. This is a good spot.
That's a good spot. And please tune in next time. We are going to be talking about time management. And I think that that'll be another fun topic that we are going to be discussing. So stay tuned for next time.
Oh man, that's gonna be so much fun. All right, I'm gonna maybe prepare for that one deeper than like the what's floating in my subconsciousness.
Bye,
All right,
everyone.
bye everybody. Bye.